Breaking news! The weather is hot ahead of free agency, and the Denver Broncos just made one of the biggest moves of the offseason. And let me tell you, it changes everything. Buckle up, because the Broncos just added an all-pro talent to a unit that was already considered elite, and that's just the beginning. I'll tell you all the details in a moment, but first make sure you've hit that like button if you've been a Denver Broncos fan for over 20 years. It's great to see fans of all ages. If possible, comment something like, "Go Broncos! I'm orange and blue in blood." Now, let's get to the point. Let's start with the big news. Talanoa Hufanga is now a Denver Bronco. This guy isn't just a good safety, he's a game changer, a player who can do it all. He's been compared to the great Troy Polamalu, and for good reason. Not only does he play with the same relentless energy, but he's also trained with Polamalu himself, bringing that old-school, hard-hitting mentality to a Broncos defense that's only getting better. Hufanga can read the field like a quarterback, making him a constant turnover threat, and when he does get it right, he hits like a freight train. That's the kind of player who takes an already elite defense to the next level. Now, some people might bring up the fact that Hufanga is coming off a knee injury, and sure, that's always a concern. But the way this deal is structured, it's all upside for Denver. He's locked in for one guaranteed year at $20 million, and if injuries become an issue, the Broncos have a built-in out. But if he stays healthy, we just landed one of the biggest steals in free agency. This isn't a case of a team giving up on a player. San Francisco simply couldn't afford him. And when a guy like that becomes available, you don't hesitate. You make the move. And Denver did just that. But here's where things get even better. The Broncos weren't the only team making moves this week. Our biggest rivals were too. Only, instead of getting stronger, they got worse. Let's start with the Chargers. They just lost their most dynamic wide receiver, Josh Palmer, to the Buffalo Bills. Palmer wasn't just a good receiver. He was the best in the league at creating separation. That's the kind of weapon you don't let walk out the door if you're serious about competing. On top of that, they lost a key defensive lineman and their breakout nose tackle, Poona Ford. Oh, and did I mention Joey Bosa is gone too? The Chargers' defense is crumbling while the Broncos are reinforcing their own. That's the kind of shift that changes the power balance in the division. And then there's the Raiders. Remember when they were bragging about all the cap space they had? They were supposed to be the team making big splashes, locking down their core players, and adding talent. Instead, they lost one of their best defensive players, someone they were reportedly high on, and he ended up signing an even bigger deal elsewhere. And their big move? They traded for a player Seattle didn't even want anymore. If you're a Raiders fan, you have to be wondering what the plan is. If you're a Broncos fan, you love to see it. Now, let's talk about the Chiefs, the reigning champs, the team that everyone is chasing. And yet, somehow, their offseason moves make no sense. They lost Samaje Perine, who played significant snaps for them this past season, especially in the playoffs. And their answer at running back? Elijah Mitchell, a player with a staggering 90% range injury risk according to analytics. The guy simply cannot stay on the field. And their big move on the offensive line? Instead of keeping their Pro Bowl caliber starting guard, they traded him away and replaced him with a backup left tackle from the 49ers. Patrick Mahomes already struggled to stay upright in the Super Bowl, and now they're downgrading the protection in front of him? That's the kind of mistake that could come back to haunt them. Meanwhile, the Broncos are making smart, calculated moves. They re-signed DJ Jones, a player that teammates rave about. Zach Allen called him one of the best run stuffers he's ever played with, going all the way back to Pee Wee football. Keeping Jones around isn't just a good move for the defense, it's a good move for team chemistry. Players like this build culture, and that's exactly what Sean Payton is trying to do. And let's not forget the quarterback room. The Broncos locked in Jarrett Stidham on a $6 million per year deal to back up Bo Nix. That's a smart, stable move. Stidham and Nix already have great chemistry, both on and off the field. And if Zach Wilson ends up getting a deal elsewhere, that could land the Broncos a compensatory pick in next year's draft. Every move is being made with a long-term vision in mind. But we're not done yet. The Broncos are still in the running for Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram, two players who could add even more firepower to this roster. If either of those deals gets done, you already know we'll be breaking it down in detail. So, here's the question for you. When the Hufanga news dropped, what was your reaction? Did you start making Super Bowl plans? Because I know a lot of Broncos fans who did. Let me know in the comments, how big of a move is this for Denver? And how do you think the rest of the offseason is going to shake out? And let's not stop there, because the implications of these moves go far beyond just adding talent. This is about shifting the balance of power in the AFC West. For years, the Chiefs have had a stranglehold on the division. The Chargers have been a team that always seemed just one step away from breaking through. And the Raiders? Well, they've been in a constant state of chaos. But what we're seeing right now is a massive shift, one that favors the Denver Broncos Broncos in ways we haven't seen in years. Let's go back to the Hufanga signing for a second, because it's not just about adding a playmaker, it's about identity. When you think about the best defenses in the NFL, they all have that one guy, the player who brings an attitude, a presence, the kind of player who makes quarterbacks hesitate before throwing over the middle. Hufanga is that guy. We already had Patrick Surtain too, arguably the best lockdown corner in the league. We already had Riley Moss, who, when healthy, was one of the highest rated corners in football last year. Now, you throw Hufanga into that mix? Opposing quarterbacks are going to have nightmares game planning against this secondary. And that's before we even talk about the pass rush. Nick Bonitto is in the running to be the sack leader of the year. Jonah Ellis is a young guy who is only going to get better. The pieces are all there. And now, with a safety like Hufanga roaming behind them, the defense becomes even more dangerous. You can send more pressure, take more risks, and force teams into bad decisions. That's what wins football games in the modern NFL. But this isn't just about defense. The Broncos are also making smart decisions on the offensive side of the ball. There were a lot of rumors swirling about whether they'd go after Atlanta Falcons center Drew Dalman in free agency. At first, some fans were frustrated when they didn't make a move. But then, the advanced analytics came out, and guess what? Luke Wattenberg, the guy the Broncos already have, actually had a better year than Dalman. And Denver is paying him half of what the Bears just gave Dalman. That's how you build a team. You don't just throw money at big names. You make strategic decisions that give you the most value. That's exactly what Sean Payton is doing. And speaking of Sean Payton, can we take a moment to appreciate the fact that this man has a plan? Unlike some of our AFC West rivals, who seem to be throwing darts at a board, Denver is making calculated, intentional moves. They're not just chasing the biggest names, they're building a team that makes sense. That's why guys like DJ Jones are getting re-signed. That's why Jarrett Stidham is being locked in as a backup. Payton knows exactly what he wants, and he's executing that vision perfectly. But let's talk about the bigger picture. The Broncos aren't just getting better, they're positioning themselves for sustained success. When you look at what's happening around the league, there's a clear trend. The teams that build through smart acquisitions and strong drafting are the ones that last. The ones that rely on splashy free agency moves to fix all their problems? They're the ones that fade away. Take the Raiders, for example. They had all the cap space in the world, and what did they do with it? Let one of their best defensive players walk while bringing in scraps from other teams. That's not how you win in this league. That's how you stay stuck in mediocrity. And the Chargers? They just lost multiple key starters while their quarterback is still on a rookie contract. That's when you're supposed to be stacking talent, not losing it. Instead, they're getting worse at a time when they should be making their move. But I want to hear from you. How big do you think the Hufanga signing is? Do you think this defense is ready to be the best in the league? And what move do you want to see the Broncos make next? Let me know in the comments, because this offseason is far from over.